Hey guys, welcome back to Grit Gym. Welcome back to Grit Gym Live. I hope you guys enjoyed the show yesterday with Kelly Potter. That I thought she did an excellent job. I was not expecting her to get on and just have that level of comfortability in front of the camera. I don't think I have that to this day. So I thought she did an excellent job. If you're scrolling through here, or you're just finding this video, go back and look for the one with Kelly Potter. It's extremely good. KP Simple on Instagram is where she does most of her work, but really good interview, and I think a lot of knowledge bombs said throughout that video. So take a look at that one. Today we're gonna go into books. I got about, I don't know how many books sitting here right now, but a stack of books. It looks like they could all just about fall over. And for those of you that don't know, I am a voracious reader, and I was not always. My mom, to try to entice me to read when I was a little kid, she bought me a book called I Hate to Read, and it was because I was so rebellious against reading. Reading was really difficult for me. This is about the same time that they were finding out dyslexia, ADD, all these learning disabilities. I don't think are learning disabilities. I think they're just personality traits that are just a little bit different from one person to the other. And I think if you're drugging those down, you're squelching all the talents, all the power, all the great things that you have about you, because what that pill represents is that you're not good enough to be who you really are. And don't let that happen. Or I shouldn't say that, because that was my truth. I took that as true reality for way too long. That was my truth that I carried with me about that pill. That pill does not represent that, but it can so easily to a kid. You tell a kid, hey, you got to take this pill to be like all the other kids. What did that say to them? What did that say to that kid? So, but still, I mean, the good and the bad, right? Like, what's the good and the bad? Can we play the good and the bad game? There's almost always, a death in the family causes you to go and take your health more seriously. That's a really sad, tragic deal. Somebody died, but woke you up. The good and the bad, what is it? A lot of people don't like the political scenario that's going on right now. Everybody's still hating on Trump. I was hoping that all the political discussions would die down by now, but they have not. And I look at it and I'm like, well, the good and the bad for me is that everybody's realizing what a joke that whole system has always been, even the ones that you look up to. So there's always a good and the bad. That's my perspective. I'm not a big lover of authority, so that's my perspective. But we're going to go through some of these books. I'm just going to lay out, what are some of the books that really changed my perspective, that really changed my life, that I think that every single person should read? If you were looking for books to expand your mind, to really dive into, that were curious, that were many of these books seemed too simple to be progressive at the time that I read them. Keep that in mind. Sometimes the simple stuff is what works. I can't tell you how many times that I've been in a consult with somebody and I said, you just need to do this. And they're like, that can't be. That's way too simple. That cannot be. And it's like, well, that's what you need to do. That's what you need to do. We can't talk, like, until we do that, we can't move on to X, Y, Z. And these are usually, in this department, I'm talking about nutrition, is usually the way it goes, because nutrition is actually very, very simple. But it's so hard because it's so difficult to change these behaviors, to change these patterns. And I think a lot of people have a lot of trouble with that. So when you lay out something that's so simple, it's so difficult, it's like an oxymoron almost in your mind. It just doesn't make sense. It's hard to wrap your head around, but it will work. It will work. Most of the time, anything works if you work at it. Anyway, that's like all these infomercials that you see that are just like, that can't be, that's bogus, that thing got to be total bullshit. Well, it probably does work because someone was ready to make the change. They were ready to make the change. Like the vegan diet will work because you're taking away an entire macronutrient group. It'll work. The low-carb diet will work because you're taking away an entire macronutrient group. All of these things will work, and they're all really just strategies. So anyway, can we get to what's actually going on in this video today? So I don't know which one should come first. I mean, I've got stack upon stack. I don't know if I can, like, that's about half of it. That's about half of the books right now. Now, the interesting thing about one of the good and the bad things about being one of the first generation of people to be on Ritalin, Dexedrine, Adderall, Concerta, Vyvanse, you name it, I took it. What was that other one? Stratera. That was a fun one. That one made you feel like you weren't ready to blow your head off about every 10 seconds. Not kidding. But I know that I read at about 250 words per minute to myself and out loud. Most people read around 250 words out loud. It's very, very normal. That's about that. That's very average. Now, to themselves, most people read around 700 to 800 words per minute. Okay, to themselves. I read about 250 words per minute to myself. So what's the good and the bad there? Like if I'm a voracious reader and I love reading, I'm so curious. I don't really love reading, but I love learning, and I'm so curious. And it's just what's on the next page. What can I break my mind into next? Which I should say for all of these that look at that and you're just like, that's super hard. It takes a lot of courage to do that. It takes a lot of courage to push through that. So anybody that's reading, it's hard to challenge your mind over and over and over again. You have to continue. Like I can't tell you how many times I want to put a book down because it's challenging my mindset so hard. It's like I disagree with everything he's saying. That's why I got to stick with it and push through it. So do you. So I don't even remember where I was at. Oh, the 800. So what's the good and the bad about only being able to read 250 words per minute? It means I go really slow. Really, really slow. So I really marinate on all of the ideas because I don't do very well on just getting A to Z and calling it good. I got to go through B, and I got to go through C, and then I got to go through D. But there's a lot of lessons in there that I get to be a part of, and I get this really great big understanding. So that's the good and the bad. So what are some of these books? Well, to be perfectly clear, this first book is one that I read. I reread it every March. It's and you'll see by how beat up it is. I think it's an extremely good book. If you're a parent, if you're a teacher, if you're a coach, if you are a person, I think that this should be required reading. And in 6th grade, in 8th grade, when you are a sophomore in high school, when you are a senior in high school, it should be required reading from every college. Every employer should require everybody to read this book, no matter what. It's about relating to people. No matter what you are in, whether you're in business, whether you're in life, whether you're in relationships, money, health, wealth, relationships, time, all of these different things, we are in a super interactive, we are a super interactive species. We need that. If you are going to get along as a human, you want to be able to relate to people, you want to be able to communicate to people. How to win friends and influence people sounds like a manipulative title. It's not about winning your friends over, but it kind of is. And it's not about influencing people by manipulation. It's about getting along with people. It's about meeting them where they are so that you can gain understanding of each other, even if you have disagreements, especially if you have disagreements. So How to Win Friends and Influence People is a book I reread every single year. And every single year, I get something new. I mean, you can tell this book is beaten. This book is beaten. I don't know how many times I've read this book now, but every single time that I read through this book, I'm always like, oh my gosh, that's so simple, and I'm not even doing it. And I've read this book so many times, and I know to do that. But when you meet somebody, you smile. And it makes them feel better. Or if you want to be interesting, well, then you got to be interested. That's a really simple one. Just be interested in somebody else. Keep eye contact with them. Be interested in what they are and who they are. Because ultimately, do you care about people? I do. Then I want to know about them. And I'm a super curious person. I want to know about you. I want to know. I want you to write in the comment section. I want you to share this post and tell me what you think. I want you to send a direct message. I want you to add me on Facebook. I want to get to know you. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Cannot say enough about this book. I think that everybody should read this book. Super, super simple read. You could read it in a weekend if you're a normal reader. If you're a person like me, you're going to take about a week to do it. The way that I do reading, and I should have said this about the beginning, I spend 1 hour every single day, no matter what, 1 hour to reading, to studying. That's how you accumulate mountains and mountains and mountains of knowledge. And you kind of become an encyclopedia if you have long-term memory capability, but no short-term memory capability like me. So 1 hour every single day. And a lot of people are like, Adam, I don't have time for that. Now, the thing is, what did we talk about commitment a while back? We said we leave no other options. It's not an obligation to go to that. It's a commitment. We are not leaving any other options. If you know the story of the burn the ships story, it's Napoleon Bonaparte, right? He sails across the to go conquer. I don't remember who it was. And all of his men are kind of, they didn't have a super morale to them. And he's like, we're going to lose this fight unless I do something. So he went and he told his generals, go burn those ships. And he addressed his troops and he said, look behind you, and all the ships were on fire. And they were like, you just doomed us. We're dead. We can't. Like, why did you do this? And he said, either we are going to win or we're going to die. And they won that fight. And they would not have won that. I personally believe that they would not have won that battle had he not burnt those ships. He left no other option. They were going to win or they were going to die. No other option. You commit fully. I'm going to spend 1 hour studying or I'm going to die. That kind of commitment. No other option. Okay, another one, I'm just going to go. Let's go in order. Let's not go in order. Strengths Finder. This is one, this is a new topic, but there's a real lack of clarity in the world around, do you follow your strengths? Do you work on your weaknesses? The best advice I've ever heard in this department, because if you look at it, they've done a lot of research. This is actually out of Omaha too, so you're supporting a Midwest company. They've done a lot of research on engagement. So people feel more engaged at work when they think that I use my words carefully here, when they think that they are working in a department in a way that uses their strengths, they are more engaged and more happy and more fulfilled at work. So why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you work through your strengths at work? Why would you work towards your weaknesses at work? Now, in your personal relationships, I do think that if you have a weak link in your relationship, then you need to work on that link. Like me, I'm so assertive in my relationships, especially with Rachel, who's just very passive, that I can kind of be a steamroller. So I have to really work on that very hard. If you guys didn't notice on most Tuesdays, I like steamroller conversation. I don't really mean to. It happens. Anyway, it's something that I need to work on in my personal relationship. But in your work and in your competition and in anything where you think that things are going to need to be extremely efficient, play to your strengths. Strengths Finder is a test. You can go and you can buy this book for, I don't know, like maybe $15, $20, and then it gives you a free test on the inside, and you can take that test. I think this is actually mine. Yeah, so my top 5 strengths were achiever, competition, command, ideation, and analytical. And if you look those up, you'll be like, oh yeah, man, that's it. That's him. So Strengths Finder, a book that really changed how I look at a lot of different things, how to build groups, also analyzing yourself and what you're good at and what you should be pushing towards. Not in order now. This one's got stuff all over, but French Kids Eat Everything. This girl, not a super great writer. Who cares? The stories in this book and her experience, extremely good. French culture around cuisine and food is extremely good. If Americans ate more like French people and we had more of a relationship with food, we have more, like good dogma around food, I think that we would have a lot less of the problems that we do have. Like if you look at French food, like a lot of pastries, a lot of like what we would call not good for you stuff. I don't know what the air quotes were for there. Not good for you stuff. But however, French people do not have the statistics that we do in the United States. Now you can pull, they are evolved to be able to handle that diet. Europe is this really, like, you go from France to Germany to England, it's so short. You can't blame genetic populations on this, okay? Like if you move to France and you adopt their way of eating, you will not have the problems that we have in the United States. So this is a really good book, especially she's doing it from a standpoint of raising a child. So she grew up, I think, in Canada, and then her and her husband moved. Her husband grew up in France, worked in Canada. He got a job back in France, so they planted the family to France. She had a really hard time fitting into the cuisine, to the tradition, culture, whatever you want to call it around food. Really good book from a nutritional standpoint and how you develop your relationship with food. Where do we put this? Courage by Osho. This guy was a spiritual leader back in the 70s, really interesting guy. very different perspectives on life. He does not follow the Hindu kind of way or the Buddhist way. He kind of combines them and makes them and gives different on each. And very interesting book. I don't think like it should be like a religion or anything, but it's a really interesting book. It gives you some different perspectives on what he thinks of. And the word courage, I think, is just probably the most important word in the human in our communication. Doing things that you're scared to do. Extremely important. Courage by Osho, really good. Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield is probably my favorite of all time. This book is awesome. Even though this book is about the Battle of Thermopylae. So if you saw the movie 300, this is the same battle. So this is more historically accurate. But anyway, the interesting thing that I found about this book, and if I give too much here, I'm going to ruin the story for you, but it seems a macho male-driven book. Until you get to, there's a certain amount of it. This book is probably the greatest feminist book, greatest book demonstrating how influential, how important females are to males, how important they are in like from a feminist standpoint, from a female empowerment standpoint. This book rocks. It's extremely good. But the one part that I'm saying that this comes up in is like 2 sentences long, but it's so powerful. If you are a female, you're going to have a hard time getting through this book, but you will appreciate things on a different level when you read this book. And if you're a male and you appreciate those 2 sentences and you can see those and how big of a deal, you can look at your mom different, you're going to look at your wife different, you're going to look at your girlfriend different, your sisters, everything, how important it is and how strong females really are. So that's an extremely good book. It's one of my, I couldn't put it down. It's the only book I can say that I couldn't put it down and I wish it wouldn't end. So, all right, we got about 10 minutes left. I got a lot of books, so I got to hurry this up. Presence Process. This is the 2nd edition. I actually lent my 1st edition to a friend and never got it back. But if you can get the 1st edition of this, way better. 2nd edition kind of sucks. But this is I think it's a 10-week or a 12-week meditation process. And you do 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night. It will not work the same if you just try to do 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night without reading the book. He's got a plan that you go through in succession from beginning to end over that 10 weeks. And I got so into this book that I decided, because my first time through I failed, and a friend of mine that I think is a total fucking pansy ass, he was beating me in this book, and he was more committed than I was. And that drove me nuts. I was like, all right, I've got to, I'm not all in with what I said I was going to do. Rechange this. Started back at the beginning. I was like on week 4, maybe. Started back at the beginning. I woke up at 4 a.m. every day, reread the chapter. So I've read this book 7 times. Reread the chapter, did my 15 minutes at night, woke up at 4 a.m. to be able to read that chapter. Wasn't getting a lot of sleep back then. Wasn't getting a lot of meditation. Loving What Is about asking questions. This is a Byron Katie book, really very good book. You can kind of read through some of her truths, and if you listen to me long enough, you really analyze what I'm saying. You kind of see through some of my truths too. So we all have them, right? It's whether we're going to keep them or lose them. But Loving What Is a really good book, really fast read, super easy, and it's just about asking yourself questions to get yourself back in a present state of mind. Not easy to do. Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk. Vaynerchuk, I think is how you're supposed to say it. But Crush It is about following your passions. And he teaches a lot about the social media stuff. And I think that this is a good book for breaking down, especially if you didn't, if you're 28 years and below, you don't know what it's like to not live with a cell phone. You don't know what it's like to not have your friends at your fingertips. You don't know what it was like to have instant messenger. You don't know what it was like to have to actually write a letter. So if you're above that age, this book is going to be very good for you. If you're 28 or above, and it's October 20th, I think, 2017. And so if you're over 28 and above, I think this book is going to be really good for you because you're going to break down some of the stigma around social media, and you're going to start following your passion for what you want to do with your life, because on social media, you automatically become a brand, which is really interesting from a business standpoint. Also, just from living your life standpoint, it's very important that we educate ourselves on what we're actually doing on social media, because this stuff's going to be out there. You don't get to take this stuff back. So these kids that, I'm so glad that social media didn't come out when I was in junior high. I would have said some of the dumbest things. I would have gotten some of the dumbest fights. And I'm very glad that was around them. But speaking of business, this is a book that's also another book that I think every 6th grade freshman, I'm going to go junior, freshman in college, senior in college, you're 30, you're 25, I don't care. You should read this book a few times. Cash Flow Quadrant is a very, very, very simple guide to how you work, how money works. Most of us don't have a financial education. The little bit of financial education that we have, let me rephrase. You got a financial education no matter what. You either learn that money was good, that money was bad, that money is greedy, that money is the root of all evil, that rental properties are good, that rental properties are bad, there's all kinds of things. This will kind of break down some of those stigmas so that you can get an idea wrapped around. And it takes this, you guys know that I'm not a big fan of taxes. I think like payroll tax, if you really knew what was going on there, payroll tax is extortion, income tax is theft, and they don't preach that. You will see that as you get your financial education. They don't preach that, but I bet you they'd agree with what I just said. Malcolm Gladwell, the 2 books that I have by Malcolm Gladwell, I actually have read every Malcolm Gladwell book so far because I think he is a wealth of perspective, very curious guy. The one book that I think is his most powerful book is his first book, Blink. Blink is, maybe Outliers was his first book. Anyway, Blink is his masterpiece from my perspective. David and Goliath is very good, breaking down some of the status quo things. Like anytime that someone's like, that David didn't stand a chance against Goliath. No, Goliath didn't stand a chance against David. David basically showed up to a Goliath basically showed up to a gunfight with a sword. Okay, David had a sling that he could throw from far away. Goliath was probably, if this is a true story, which historically I think it's accurate, right? Goliath would have actually was basically blind and he couldn't see him. Like, even if you read the story, Goliath wanted him to come closer so that he could fight him. And David just, boom, knocked him right out, killed him, right? Goliath did not stand a chance. David went in that fight knowing what he could do. He just had a better strategy, right? But Blink is one of the books that I think will break down racism. I think it will I think it'll bring an understanding to racism. For instance, there's a part where he talks about if whatever you are, you will be biased to that thing. So whatever the back of your hand, like you don't see your face all the time, but you see the back of your hands, you know that, okay, I'm a halfway dark white guy, right? A lot of people think I'm Middle Eastern, but I'm not. And I mean, it'd be fine with them being Middle Eastern. But anyway, you will identify more with what you're used to seeing. So you have a natural bias to it. So in the blink of an eye, we can judge whether a person was happy, whether they were sad, the emotion that was on their face. Just in general, we cannot judge what kind of color a person was or what race or ethnicity or anything like that. So he does all these experiments, or he labels out all these experiments that have been done over time and finds that there's just a natural bias to for like white people are naturally biased to white people, black people are naturally biased to black people, Hispanics are naturally biased to Hispanics. So if there was 4 corners, let's say, and you're in the middle of the room and there's a bunch of black people in that corner, a bunch of Hispanics in that corner, Asians back in that corner, and white people in that corner, whatever you are, you will feel more comfortable gravitating towards the area of the room that is you. That is the same ethnicity as you, which is really interesting. So Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, everybody should read that. It's an extremely good book, and it gives you an idea of how often you're doing things that you don't even realize that you're doing. They're just already playing out in your mind without you even thinking about it. This is a book that everybody's got a lot of opinions on. I think whether you're Democrat, Libertarian, Republican, whether you think that money is good or money is bad, whether you think that big business is good, big business is bad, corporations, insurance companies, anything like that, you think it's good or bad, I don't really care. This book is worth the read. It took me a long time. This was definitely a tough book to get through, but regardless of your perspective or your viewpoints, whether you agree or disagree with any of the books that I've laid out here, it'll challenge your perspective and it'll give you new ways to understand someone else. And I think that if we can grow understanding, especially with people that we disagree with, then we can have a discussion, and then the discussion can be this really, really great thing. But Ayn Rand is a little bit of an angry writer, and by a little bit I'm exaggerating. She's a very angry writer, so we know that anger is a symptom of the fear of not being enough, right? But she did write in a time where women didn't have the voice that they have today, even though, like, I'm not saying that women have the super strong voice today, but in comparison to the past, they have a lot more voice today than they had back when Ayn Rand was writing. And she took a lot of heat for this, and she really stuck to this, had to work very hard, from a lot of different angles. I can admire Ayn Rand, but extremely good book, extremely good story. Definitely very interesting views on being selfish versus selfless, and being objective about a scenario and staying logical. She does bring out some of her truths, and she obviously has some weird sex shit going on, but really interesting book, very entertaining, well worth the read. This book, basically, this book was suggested to me. I had lunch with she's widely considered the top sports psych coach in the world. And this is how low on the totem pole sports psych is at this point. I think within the next 10 years, you're going to see this thing blow up. A lot more people are going to have sports psych coaches in their corner at sporting events. And I'll be very excited for the day when high school athletes actually have a sports psych coach that they can go and talk to. But Mindset is an extremely, extremely, extremely good book. It's about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Just like anything else with this stuff, any coach, any leader, any teacher that is willing to teach this stuff, and from my perspective, is that they need to tackle their own bullshit first. This isn't like push this on your athletes and your kids and your students. This is about you first and growing your communication with your kids, with your athletes, and with yourself. This was actually the first sports psych book I ever got. That's why I pulled it off of the shelf. It's good, but I read this when I was 17. Very good book on sports psychology. It's dense for a 17-year-old. I really think I missed the mark on a lot of this kind of stuff. But The Middle Game of Baseball is very good. What else do we have? Conscious Loving. This is about a lot of people when they get into relationships, they have a really hard time not giving up who they really are. It's difficult and understandably. But this is a really good book about getting into a relationship, a loving relationship and it's the closest book I've ever found that to get to the definition of love, how they define love. Now to me, love is that I'm present and that's enough. If I love myself, I'm right here, right now, and I'm enough in this moment. I'm enough to do my absolute gut-wrenching best in this moment. That's love. That's my definition of love. That I'm present. Yeah, that's enough. And I know that that's really simple, but when I get into, let's say I'm in a relationship with someone, the bond, the true love between two people is that you get to share that presence, that you get to be all in the moment with each other. And that's a lot of what this book is about. It's a very good book on relationships and health, wealth, relationships, time. Everything that I talked about today, everything that all these books, they're all on health, wealth, relationships, time. If you have 4 great, big, awesome resources in this life, why would you not study them? Why would you not learn about them? Why would you not try to challenge your own mind around them? Why would you not push and try to grow your relationships to the greatest ability that they possibly have? Why don't you have a coach for your health, your coach for your relationships, a coach for your wealth? And the interesting thing about all 3 of those, because I've had multiple coaches and still do have coaches in all 3 of those sectors, they all talk about time. So I've never really had just a coach that was just like, oh, all I do is teach time. But that would be interesting. The 10X Rule is a really good book. The first time I read this, it was on it was an audio program, so it was kind of interesting to read it versus or to listen to it versus read it. But really good book about the effort it takes to actually get things done. We see this all the time. People come in, they want to be a fitness competitor, they want to lose 100 pounds, they want to do this crazy, awesome thing in their life. And I'm full support of that. I have this massive belief in people because I've seen people do this kind of stuff. I've seen people become fitness competitors that you'd say were never going to happen. I've seen people lose a ton of weight. I've seen people get really, really strong that don't have any athletic ability. I've seen crazy things that you would not believe people could actually do. But I've also seen the opposite side of that realize those people did tons and tons and tons and tons of work. And I know that some of you watching this and some of the people that have come in here that I've worked with, let's say someone comes in here and they want to do one of those things. And I think, well, I know it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take 10 times as much work to get 1/10 of the effect that you think that you need. That's kind of what the 10X rule is about. It's going to take so much work, so much more work, so much more, because it's not just coming into the gym. It's also changing your nutrition. It's not just changing what you eat. It's also changing your lifestyles, changing your friends. Like, could you walk out on your family? Could you walk, like, how important is this thing to you? Because there are tons of things that might be holding you to where you are that you're going to have to get rid of to get where you want to go. And the 10X rule is about taking action on those things so that you can push forward into them. And it's really, really, really tough. And to get real, very, very real on what it takes, you're going to have to do 10 times the amount of work that you think that you're going to have to do. Season of Life. Season of Life is an extremely good book about relationships between father and son. Whether it's mother-daughter or just parents in general, I think that everybody should read this book. It gets a little bit religious-y at certain times, but if you're not religious, then it's just words. It's just words and lessons. And if you are religious, then great. But from a professional standpoint, I cannot say that 531, from a conceptual standpoint, I know it gets a lot of hate, and it's like, oh, that's too simple, or I can't get strong that way. Bullshit. 531 is something that more people need to understand. Professionals even don't understand how strength works. It blows my mind. You want somebody to get stronger? Well, it takes little tiny increments over time. And it means that every single time that you leave the weight room, you got to feel like you didn't do enough. You got to do far less weight to get stronger than you think that you do. Maxing out every day doesn't work. Intervention, this is just the PDF that got printed off, but Intervention by Dan John, extremely good book. I know these are kind of professional stances, but if you're into the strength and conditioning stuff, Intervention is an extremely good book. It's worth the read. How to Look Like Tarzan. Oh, this is Easy Strength. Easy Strength, again, another book on how lifting less makes you progress more. Okay? And you're not going to get bigger for long without getting injured if you're just sitting there with bad movement patterns. So Easy Strength is about not lifting so much that you feel like you can't do it. You should very, very, very rarely ever miss a lift. This book actually changed a lot of my perspectives around strength conditioning and also how we work with the general population. Ultimate Back and Fitness and Performance by Stuart McGill. Stuart McGill is the leading researcher on spines in the United States. We weren't doing crunches. We were doing a lot of anti-rotation stuff. We were doing the conceptual version of everything that he says in here. The application of definitely became much more enhanced when I read this, maybe like, I don't know, 7 years ago, something like that. But extremely good books. I hope you guys got something out of this today. I've wanted to do a book review once a week and just talk about one book that I read, 'cause I've read so many books. But these are some that I think anybody could just go and grab off the shelf and get something out of in an immediate time. And all of these are very, very interesting reads, at least for me anyway. So I hope they're interesting reads for you too. But guys, please take the time, slap the share button. Tell me if you like this video. And if you have any questions, I'm always up for answering them in the comment section or in the DM. So thanks for being here, guys. I really appreciate it. We'll be back on Monday. Yeah, Monday already. All right. See you guys soon.